Inside a towering building, the sound of a news broadcast fills the room as water runs from a nearby shower. The voice on the screen announces the upcoming shareholder meeting that will decide the new chairman of Samjung Group, one of the top 3 conglomerates in the nation. Seongguk listens while showering. Eyes fixed on the television, the anchor then reveals that the new chairman has been chosen. It is Seongguk, stepping out of the shower, dripping wet. He throws his head back and laughs in disbelief and triumph, his grin wide with pride as he says with confidence, "Yes, go on. Praise me more." Filled with arrogance, he declares that he will become the king of Samjung Group and that the world will honor him. Memories flash through his mind. His childhood filled with relentless studying and dealing with irresponsible siblings. He remembers taking care of his ill uncle, handling an arranged marriage, and shaping a flawless public image in a society that constantly demanded more. Despite all the obstacles, he had done everything right. Now holding a glass of wine, he looks out with satisfaction, thinking he finally owns everything he worked for. Soon the company would be officially his. Grabbing his phone, he begins listing the people he intends to remove, those who failed him or stood in his way. But in the middle of his moment of power, his phone slips from his hand. A sharp pain hits his chest. His heart pounds erratically. The wine glass crashes to the floor. His breath catches. His eyes land on a framed photo of his grandfather, the same grandfather who once died of a heart attack. Realization hits him hard. It is happening to him too. He refuses to accept it. This was supposed to be his moment of celebration, but before he can do anything, everything fades and his body gives out. A gentle voice calls to him. A soft hand touches his cheek. He opens his eyes in shock. He is no longer a man. He is a child, a baby being held in the arms of 2 people, his parents, their faces glowing with happiness. He touches his soft baby face in disbelief and cries out, "What is happening?" His mother smiles, saying how adorable and handsome their baby is. His father agrees proudly. Maybe he'll grow up to be a celebrity. They laugh and beam with joy, but Seongguk is screaming inside. This is torture. He remembers his chiseled body sculpted through years of discipline, now reduced to this tiny, fragile form. He had only one night as king before everything was ripped away. Worse, he quickly realizes he has been reborn into a poor family. Looking around their modest home and simple clothes, the truth hits him. They have nothing except love, longing for his luxurious lifestyle. He suddenly craves his favorite wine, the one that cost 4 million won per bottle. But instead, someone offers him a bottle of milk. He wants to resist, but his baby body betrays him. His mouth waters, and before he knows it, he drinks it all, disgusted but helpless. His father kisses his cheek and Seongguk winces. He would rather be dead than live like this. He cries again in fury, but his parents just assume he's tired or hungry. They hold him close with warmth he never had in his past life. His childhood had been cold, his family distant. No one ever really cared whether he ate or smiled. His father was mostly absent, his siblings cruel. Remembering all of it makes him cry harder. His parents gently put him to sleep. As he drifts off, his father turns on the TV and sits down. A news report begins, and suddenly Seongguk's eyes fly open. He hears a name he never thought he would hear again. His grandfather is alive and well. He realizes this isn't the future. It's the past. Shock runs through him as he sees the report. His grandfather is involved in the Apple Box bribery scandal, being investigated by prosecutors and appearing in court. Memories come flooding back from when Seongguk was 10, the scandal that nearly destroyed their family's reputation. Critics claim the company's rise was built on corruption. Seongguk watches in frustration, thinking if money is such a problem for people, then influence and connections should matter even more. People always believed saving money made them rich. But that wasn't the reality he lived. Meanwhile, his parents are simply delighted watching him crawl for the first time, amazed at how intelligent he seems for a baby, wondering how he understands so much already. Meanwhile, Seongguk's thoughts are spinning as he continues to process everything. He remembers clearly the day his grandfather had to appear before the prosecutors and how he was used as part of the act. Back then, at just 10 years old, he had been made to push his grandfather's wheelchair in front of cameras, a carefully crafted performance designed to earn sympathy from the public. But to Seongguk, it was his moment of arrival, the day he declared silently to the world that he was the rightful heir to Samjung Group. Yet there was always an obstacle. His foolish younger uncle, John Tae, who had gone overseas under the guise of studying, but instead turned into a disgrace, falling into addiction and constantly trying to steal Seongguk's position. Pressing his small hand against the glowing TV screen, Seongguk's face burns with frustration. But none of that is the real issue now. The true problem isn't being reborn or even waking up in the past. The actual nightmare is losing everything he built. The life he dominated now slipping through his fingers as he's trapped in the body of a helpless child. Tears pour down his cheeks as he cries without holding back. Soon the sky darkens and his mother enters, holding a tray of food. He hasn't eaten anything since morning and his stomach rumbles loudly. Still, his eyes stay glued to the news report flashing on the screen. His mother watches with concern growing by the second. Just then, his father comes home carrying a small bag with excitement in his voice. He announces that his boss at the restaurant gave him some leftover meat. He's thrilled to prepare a special meal for his family, but as he walks toward the kitchen, his wife stops him. She looks worried and explains that their son hasn't eaten, hasn't slept properly, and only watches television all day. Dark circles are visible under his small eyes, and when they try changing the channel, he bursts into tears. Hearing this, the father smiles reassuringly and says, "Leave it to me, I'll fix it." He walks over playfully, trying to distract the boy, but before he can even reach for the remote, Seong-guk grabs his finger and shoots him a piercing glare. The father freezes on the spot, startled by the intensity in his child's eyes. Inside Seong-guk's mind, there's no time for this. Every second counts. The more he learns, the better his chances of understanding his reality, the condition of the company, the actions of his grandfather, and most of all, how to return to his rightful body. But just when he's focused, the TV screen goes dark. His mother has turned it off. Her voice gentle as she says, "You haven't eaten anything yet. Please eat something first." But Seong-guk breaks into loud sobs again, his heart screaming in silence. "What do you know? Do you have any idea what I went through to claim my place? I built everything from the ground up only to lose it in one night. None of this matters to me. I just want my body back." His arms reach toward the now black screen as tears run down his cheeks. His mother strokes his back and softly tells him to rest for now. You can watch again tomorrow. Exhausted and emotionally drained, his hunger returns and he drinks the milk offered to him without resistance. Shortly after, his eyes close and he falls asleep in silence. His mother watches him with concern deepening. He's already a year old, but he's never once called her mom or his father dad. All he ever does is sit silently watching the news like he's not really a child. His father grows anxious too, and wonders if they've raised him the wrong way. Maybe their son doesn't even recognize them as his parents. Overwhelmed by guilt and worry, the father embraces both his wife and his child and vows to love him even more, hoping that with time their son will open his heart and call them mom and dad someday. In the following days, Seong-guk's condition only worsens. He never truly sleeps, only pretends to close his eyes while secretly keeping them open to watch every frame of news. Each time they switch off the TV, he reacts violently, once even biting his father's hand in protest. Yet despite all his effort, nothing valuable has come from his late-night spying. His frustration builds as each day passes. The world keeps moving forward while he remains stuck in the body of a powerless baby. He thinks back to his old life and how even then he barely allowed himself joy. Only work, only results. And now he has even less control. His mother notices he isn't watching the TV today and asks gently, "Why not watching the news now?" But in his head, Seong-guk thinks there's no use anymore. "I won't find what I need this way. I've already given up." At that moment, his mother picks him up with a smile. "If you're not watching today, then let's talk instead. We need to buy groceries anyway. Want to come to the market with me?" Cradled in her arms, he looks out the window where she points out the flowers blooming outside. "Look how beautiful they are." As they step outside, the breeze is gentle and the weather feels perfect. Suddenly, a girl appears in front of them, and his mother quickly explains that she's their landlord. Seong-guk stares curiously at the young girl, thinking, is she on her way to work? The girl responds calmly, saying, "You're heading out late today," before walking off. Watching her leave, Seong-guk's thoughts swirl again. Is this really the owner of our building? How could someone so young hold such a title? After that, they were walking near a construction site where renovations were in progress. Seong-guk was with his mother and the landlord lady. His mom smiled and mentioned she would make a tasty soup later, while Seong-guk internally sighed, knowing he would only be drinking milk again. Just then, his eyes caught something on the upper floor of the building. A thick metal bar was wobbling dangerously, and before anyone could react, it came crashing down. Seong-guk froze, but his mother didn't hesitate for a second. She immediately shielded him with her body. When the dust settled, she was lying on the ground covered in blood, injured badly. The girls nearby were in shock, and one of them quickly called for an ambulance. Seong-guk was unharmed. Thanks to his mother's selfless act, he stared at her in disbelief, unable to process that she might die just because she wanted to protect him. At the hospital, she was rushed into surgery as medical staff briefed the doctor. But then something strange happened. The doctor suddenly paused as if something familiar struck him, but no one knew why. Time passed, and eventually his mother regained consciousness. Her husband was sitting at her side with a tense look on his face. As soon as she opened her eyes, he started asking if she was okay. But instead of answering his concern, she asked immediately how their son was doing. He reassured her that Seongguk's completely fine and right there with them. Tears rolled down Seongguk's face as he clung to his mom. She held him and softly told him not to be afraid because she was all right. The moment overwhelmed him, and he cried even harder while hugging her tightly. His parents assumed he was still scared from the accident, but in truth he was consumed by guilt knowing how close she came to losing her life for him. As she looked around the hospital room, she realized something was off. It was clearly a high-end private room. She asked her husband how they could afford something like this. He looked uneasy, but after a pause, he simply said she needed to focus on resting because she was pregnant. Her eyes widened in shock, and her cheeks turned red from embarrassment. He kissed her forehead gently and told her not to worry about anything else for now. While they shared a quiet, emotional moment, a nurse entered and said visiting time was over. Her husband picked up Seongguk to take him home. As they walked away, Seongguk noticed something that made his heart sink. His father's shoes were completely worn out, and he didn't even have money for bus fare. Despite all that they were about to raise another child, part of him wanted to feel resentment, but another part reflected on everything his parents had done. His father constantly worked himself to the bone, and his mother had just risked her life to protect him. Realizing this, he suddenly felt fortunate to have them. Without thinking, he called out the word, Dad. His father froze in place and slowly turned around, eyes wide in shock. It was the first time his son had ever said that word. Overjoyed, he raised his arm in the air and shouted that his son finally called him Dad. For the first time, Seongguk truly accepted them as his real family. A week passed, and they prepared a small meal to welcome his mother home from the hospital. Seongguk had grown a little taller and dressed in a traditional outfit, while striking a confident pose for a picture his father was taking. His mom giggled and said he looked too adorable. His dad chimed in proudly, saying their son could easily be mistaken for a celebrity. But Seongguk wasn't focused on compliments. Instead, he was troubled by their situation. They were poor and had barely managed to pay the hospital bills or even afford basic transportation. Then it dawned on him that this day was more than a celebration of recovery. It was his birthday. The small party was for him, and looking at his parents, he felt something deeper stir inside. Their love wasn't something money could buy, and that was what truly mattered. Smiling softly, he made a promise to himself. During the time his mom had been hospitalized, he had come to a decision. He realized his parents didn't understand money at all. They didn't know how to manage it, where to invest, or how to build security. And with a massive financial crisis looming in the future, he couldn't just sit back. He had knowledge that could change everything, and he was ready to use it. Just then, a loud knock echoed through the small house. It startled him enough to cover his ears. When he opened the door, it was the landlord lady. She smiled and said she had heard about his mother being discharged, so she dropped by. And right after that, she asked if they had ever thought of making Seongguk a child actor. The scene shifted, and his mother was now standing in front of a building, staring at a poster for an audition. Seongguk muttered that this was the place. But as he looked at the entrance, anxiety filled his expression. He thought maybe they shouldn't be here. Maybe it was a mistake, but deep inside he knew this was an opportunity he couldn't ignore, a step forward for his new life. His mother hesitated, but finally pushed open the door and walked inside. A memory played in his mind of the day the landlord first suggested the audition. She had explained that her company was working on a commercial for a well-known conglomerate and needed a child actor for the main role. When she first saw Seongguk, she was amazed by how cute and striking he looked, and truly believed he had the potential, so she encouraged them to give it a try. At the audition venue, Seongguk's mother arrived, looking slightly nervous, while Seongguk stood beside her with a chilling smirk on his face, thinking that those meant to succeed always find a way, and this was his chance to prove himself while making money too. Since he had grown up surrounded by lights, cameras, and makeup, it all felt like second nature to him. And with people always comparing his looks to top celebrities, he believed he was even more attractive than them. So he was confident he would breeze through this without much effort. But his mother noticed his strange expression and wondered why her son was smiling like that. Just then, the elevator doors opened and a loud voice echoed from inside, demanding them to get in quickly. Both Seongguk and his mother looked startled as an older woman standing nearby turned to them and gestured for them to enter. She was actually the caretaker of a wealthy child standing next to her. Seongguk's mother looked at the boy and commented on how adorable he looked. But the old woman puffed up with pride and declared that of course he was their young master. Before she could say anything more, the boy's mother suddenly snapped at them, warning them not to speak to her son, and accusing Seongguk's mom of trying to spy on the competition. Then, with a smug grin, she confidently announced that her son would win no matter what. Hearing this sparked something in Seongguk. He looked over at the arrogant woman, silently observing her expensive clothes and flashy accessories, thinking it made sense why she acted like that, since she was clearly wealthy. But deep inside, he clenched his fists and swore he would crush them during the audition. When the process started inside the studio, the staff called for child number 8, who performed a small scene while a woman guided him to face the camera. Seongguk's mother watched with concern, thinking how hard it looked. But Seongguk stayed calm, knowing it was only a basic screen test to check appearance and acting potential. Under the hot lights, the boy on stage looked uncomfortable, squinting from the brightness. Then it was time for child number 10, who turned out to be the rich woman's son, and the staff's behavior suddenly shifted, treating her with extra respect. Probably due to her money. The boy was asked to smile for the camera, but he looked petrified, and drops of sweat rolled down his face. From a distance, his mother shouted at him to smile, but no matter how loud she got, he wouldn't respond. And soon tears filled his eyes. The staff sighed and said they had to move on since he couldn't continue, but the rich lady protested, demanding more time. The announcer tried to explain that other kids were waiting, but she scoffed, saying that giving her son a few extra minutes wouldn't ruin anything. At that moment, the director entered the room and called out the next name, Jung Seongguk. His voice was firm and commanding, telling the woman to leave quietly without causing a scene. She stormed off in anger, and as she passed by, she shoved Seongguk's mother aside just to get a closer look at him. Seongguk stared at her with calm intensity, determined to show her what real talent looked like. He stepped into the spotlight and without hesitation, gave the cutest smile he could manage, stunning the entire room. The director himself seemed slightly flustered and told him to look into the camera, which he did with a flawless side angle. When asked to act cute, he did it so naturally that everyone in the room was clearly impressed. The director watched closely and thought to himself that this child wasn't just talented, he was extraordinary. The rich woman stood nearby, boiling with envy as she watched Seongguk perform with such charm and confidence. Her frustration nearly reached its limit. The director then turned to Seongguk's mother and excitedly praised her son, saying he was phenomenal. Completely taking her by surprise as she stood speechless, Seongguk remained calm and muttered to himself that this wasn't even difficult. The director introduced himself as Director Quack and eagerly shook her hand, telling her they should sign a contract right away. Still overwhelmed, she asked if her son was really that good. Since she hadn't expected any of this to happen, the director laughed and said that anyone with experience in the field could see right away how gifted her son was. He explained that whatever pose or emotion he asked for, Seongguk delivered instantly and with perfect timing, as if he could read the director's mind. Hearing this, Seongguk quietly thought that of course he could understand everything, even if he looked like a kid. His mind was far ahead, just as the director was imagining all the future projects they could work on together. A loud crashing sound interrupted the moment. The rich woman had thrown down a light and screamed furiously, accusing the director of making a decision before the audition was officially finished. Her voice echoed through the studio as she shouted that she would never accept anyone else winning over her son. With no other option, the director announced a final showdown between Seongguk and the arrogant woman's child. As the last stage of the audition, everyone gathered together in the hall as the tension built. Seongguk's mother sat quietly, feeling a bit nervous and slightly overwhelmed by the rich woman's commanding tone. But as her eyes landed on her son, she found herself smiling, thinking with pride that no other child in this room could match her son's charm and intelligence. She felt grateful for the director's praise earlier, but that joy quickly turned into uneasiness as the pressure of the moment weighed on her. The elderly caretaker sitting nearby noticed her expression and gently asked if something was wrong, to which Seongguk's mother casually replied that she just needed to visit the restroom, handing her son over to the older woman before leaving. The elderly woman looked at Seongguk with kind eyes and commented softly on how adorable he was. Her gentle compliment made Seongguk smile, but it instantly triggered the rich woman, who snapped furiously at the caretaker, scolding her for praising another child in front of her son and accusing her of drawing comparisons, raising her voice even louder. She warned the old woman that she'd lose her job if she ever did that again, her rage escalating as she mockingly asked if the caretaker wanted to adopt the boy. Trying to shame her publicly, the older woman quickly defended herself, explaining it was just a harmless comment. Nothing more. Seongguk, hearing everything, held back his irritation and thought how satisfying it would be to slap the arrogant woman. Just then, an assistant director approached the rich woman and glanced around before she told him confidently not to worry. Since Seongguk's mother had stepped out, assuring him it was safe to speak, this made Seongguk uneasy as he sensed something was off. The woman muttered bitterly about how much effort she had put into making her son a star and claimed that his success was already guaranteed. Then the shocking truth was revealed when the assistant director confirmed that her son had been selected as the winner. Before the auditions had even started, Seongguk, listening closely, was stunned to realize everything had been rigged. The assistant director warned her that if the director found out, it could cause serious backlash. But the woman laughed it off, saying the director had no power over her family and everything had already been arranged. He tried to reason with her by reminding her of the director's accolades and the influence he carried in the industry. but she dismissed his concerns and insisted that her son must win no matter what. The assistant director reassured her, saying her son did a better job than Seongguk and that Seongguk was practically useless. Just needing more practice, Seongguk heard this and shot the man a cold stare. Hiding his anger behind a calm face, the assistant director began rehearsing the script again with the rich woman's son, having him repeat his lines several times. Meanwhile, Seongguk gave a sly smile as the final audition was about to start. Both boys stood on stage, and Seongguk's mother returned, visibly anxious, but her son turned to her and gave a thumbs up, silently telling her that he had everything under control. The director called for action, and the assistant director gave instructions to the rich woman's son. But before anything else, Seongguk quickly adjusted his position so the camera would capture him clearly, while the other boy instinctively ran toward his mother instead of following directions. The director let out a small laugh and told them to hold off on him for now. Then he focused on testing Seongguk first and asked the assistant director to feed him a line. Unsure if Seongguk could pull it off, the assistant director hesitated but told him to say the word, "Daddy." To his complete surprise, Seongguk delivered the line perfectly on his first attempt. The director grinned in satisfaction and said that he had found the right actor. Then it was time for the rich woman's son to try the same line. The director instructed him to say, "Daddy," but the boy immediately started crying. His mother stood there in shock, unable to process what was happening. Even after all the preparation and practice, her son couldn't say a single word. Overwhelmed by panic, she accidentally blurted out that she had trained him specifically for this, her voice filled with desperation. The director overheard her and looked suspicious, realizing something was wrong. The assistant director quickly stepped in, ending the audition abruptly and thanking everyone in an attempt to cover up the truth and prevent any further damage. Not long after the audition ends, Seongguk's mother is informed of the final result. She hears the words that freeze her in place. The winner is not your son. It's the son of the rich woman. Shocked and speechless, she struggles to understand how this happened. After seeing how well Seongguk performed, anger rising inside her, she marches over to confront the assistant director, demanding an explanation. But he simply shrugs with a smirk and says that just because a child acts cute doesn't mean he deserves to be on screen. The words hit her hard, leaving her stunned. Before she can respond, the rich woman steps in with a sneer, looking down at her and saying coldly that poor people should know their place and never try to compete where they don't belong. Seongguk's mother quickly covers her son's ears, trying to protect him from the venom in those words. But the wealthy woman doesn't stop, her voice dripping with arrogance as she continues talking. Like people without money have no worth. After finishing her tirade, she turns and walks away with her head high, leaving Seongguk's mother frozen in disbelief, tears beginning to form in her eyes, wondering how someone could be so cruel in front of a child. Just then, Seongguk gently tugs her sleeve, his expression calm, thinking to himself that everything is going just as he planned, a sly smile forming on his lips. Right at that moment, the director hurries out, calling for Seongguk's mother. Then the scene shifts back to an earlier conversation between the assistant director and the wealthy woman. Seongguk had already figured out that winning fairly was impossible in this situation. Those with money could manipulate outcomes as they pleased, and in his past life, he had learned that direct confrontation was useless when dealing with powerful people. Instead of fighting a losing battle, he decided to focus on what truly mattered. Making connections and climbing higher, the director, now looking conflicted, explains that the decision had already been made before the audition began, but then gently rests his hand on Seongguk's head and tells him to come to next week's shoot. Seongguk listens carefully, his mind racing, and then everything becomes clear. His plan was never about winning the audition directly. Step 1. Win the director's trust. Step 2. Get consistent child actor roles. Step 3. Build his name. Step 4. Earn real money. He didn't just want to appear in ads, he wanted to act. And if he could work with someone like this director, the path to success would open wide. With a grin forming on his face, he thinks about how this could change his family's life. His mother still looks unsure and asks why they were invited if he didn't win. The director explains that backup child actors are always kept on hand in case the main one can't perform or falls ill. He also admits he's not confident in the rich woman's son. The boy cries constantly and may not be useful on set. Seongguk understands instantly. The director doesn't fully believe in the official winner, which is why he wants Seongguk nearby. The director suddenly grabs his mother's hand and bows slightly, sincerely asking them to join the shoot. Seongguk's mother hesitates, unsure whether this is the right thing for her son, but Seongguk is screaming inside for her to accept, his eyes shining with determination and ambition. The director laughs, clearly impressed by how much the boy understands without speaking a word. He hands her his card, gives her a contract, and even offers his personal number for any future work. This was exactly what Seongguk had hoped for, to earn the director's trust and move beyond modeling into acting. Soon, the scene shifts to the set. Seongguk's mother arrives, amazed by the size and energy of the filming location. Then, the assistant director rushes over, spotting them. But Seongguk glares at him with icy eyes, making the man uncomfortable without saying a word. Inside, Seongguk is fuming, thinking about how corrupt this assistant director is. As they are led toward the waiting area, Seongguk suddenly notices something shocking. Among the set props are washing machines and other products made by his family's company. The same products that later became wildly successful and caused the stock price to explode. Just then, the rich woman appears again, her voice sharp as she snaps at Seongguk's mother, asking why they're here since they lost the audition. But this time, Seongguk's mother doesn't back down. She boldly replies that the director invited them as backup. Seongguk watches proudly, thinking how cool his mom just sounded, silently cheering her on. The rich woman looks puzzled and repeats the words backup model in disbelief. The assistant director quickly tries to smooth things over by explaining the situation, but the wealthy woman scoffs and insists there's no need for a backup, since her son is more than capable of handling the role, ignoring the reality that her son had failed miserably. However, her son stands nearby, clearly nervous, his expression stiff with anxiety. Seongguk instantly picks up on it, thinking to himself that the boy doesn't seem like he can act at all. Still, the woman keeps pushing, telling them to leave since extras aren't needed here. But then Seon-mi, the lead actress, enters the set. Her presence grabs everyone's attention, her beauty making the entire crew pause. She walks over calmly and says they'll be shooting the scene with this boy today. The assistant director quickly explains the casting situation, pointing out that the official lead is the rich woman's son, while Seongguk is only a backup. At first, Seon-mi heads toward the rich woman's son and reaches out her hand kindly, attempting to connect. But the boy gives no response, his attitude cold and standoffish. Seon-mi's expression darkens, annoyed. She turns and walks straight to Seongguk, who greets her with a warm smile and takes her hand confidently. Instantly, her mood lifts, and she begins chatting with him comfortably. Seongguk's mother steps forward proudly and says her son is very sociable and gets along with everyone. Seon-mi laughs lightly and announces that she wants to act with this boy instead of the other one. The rich woman, hearing this, completely loses control and grabs Seon-mi's arm, shouting in anger. But Seon-mi calmly pulls her arm away, unfazed by the tantrum. Seongguk and his mother watch the drama unfold, barely holding back their amusement. Then suddenly, a man places his hand on the rich woman's shoulder and tells her coldly to lower her voice. Seon-mi turns and greets him with a polite smile, calling him vice chairman. The man nods and steps forward, and Seon-mi curiously asks what brings him to the set. The man replies that he's here to observe the shoot. Seongguk stares at him, frozen, the realization hitting hard. This is John Jae-hyung, vice chairman of Samyung, and more importantly, his father. Seongguk remembers how his father wasn't a great parent or husband, but a capable executive. During difficult times, he led internal restructuring and made investments in promising fields, earning a name as a forward-thinking business leader. Even Forbes had recognized him as a rising figure in the tertiary sector, yet, despite his business success, he was known for being a playboy and a neglectful family man. Memories from Seongguk's previous life come flooding back, including when his father introduced him to Seon-mi, who at the time was one of his many mistresses and the one he liked most. Seon-mi now points at Seongguk and says she wants to shoot the commercial with him, praising his charm. Just then, the vice chairman steps toward Seongguk and addresses him directly. Inside, Seongguk refers to him as father, but keeps his expression neutral. Someone nearby calls out to the vice chairman, addressing him as chairman and reminding him it's time to head inside. Before leaving, the man tells everyone they should get ready and then turns to the rich woman, warning her sternly to behave and cooperate during filming. The woman flinches and bows quickly, clearly shaken by the rebuke. Watching this unfold, Seongguk thinks to himself that even the richest people still bow when someone truly powerful speaks. Because in this world, money alone isn't enough. His father may be a terrible parent, but when it comes to business, he is ruthless and commanding. The man then places a hand on Seongguk's shoulder and tells him to do well in the shoot, after which he leaves without another word, watching his father's back disappear. Seongguk makes a quiet promise to himself. He will live a better life than the one he lived before, and this time, he will protect his mother and hold on to the family he has come to treasure, unlike his previous life where he was left without love. This time, he's determined to build something real, something lasting. Just then, the assistant director calls the rich woman over and tells her it's time for her son to start filming. A staff member leads her in the direction of the set, while both boys are positioned nearby. Seongguk glances over at the other child with a mischievous smirk, like he's already a few steps ahead. The scene shifts to the commercial set, where the director walks the team through the concept. First, Seon-mi will place dirty laundry into the washing machine, Then the child actor is supposed to hug the clean clothes, smell them with a smile, and call her mommy. Seong-guk thinks back to his previous life, remembering how that very commercial had become a massive hit. Celebrated for its direction and winning the Donghai Advertising Award, the child actor from that shoot had skyrocketed to fame. But as soon as the cameras start rolling, the rich woman's son begins crying uncontrollably, ruining take after take. Seonmi quickly grows irritated and demands to know what's wrong with him, why he keeps acting up. When people try to calm him down, he lashes out and even hits those around him, shocking the staff. Sungguk's mother watches with wide eyes, stunned by the boy's violent behavior. Meanwhile, Sungguk just smiles quietly to himself. It turns out he had spoken to the boy earlier, offering him what he called a useful tip. If you don't want to do this, and you want to get out from your mom's control, just cry as loud as you can and hit people whenever Seonmi comes near. Then they'll have no choice but to send you home. Somehow, even as a child, Seong-guk had managed to communicate his idea and influence the boy's actions, and now everything was going exactly as he planned. The director, clearly irritated, calls for a backup child actor, which instantly enrages a wealthy woman nearby who snaps, "My son won the audition. How dare you call someone else?" She yells furiously. But the director, his patience wearing thin, responds sharply, "Your son has been crying nonstop for an hour and we haven't shot a single scene. He won't listen to anyone and keeps slapping the lead actress. What else are we supposed to do? The shoot has to wrap today." Unable to accept this, the woman arrogantly pulls out an old phone and declares, "Do you even know who my family is?" She begins dialing, claiming she's calling a chairman. Watching this unfold, Sungguk finds it amusing that someone so rich is still using a phone from decades ago. The woman continues screaming, creating a chaotic scene until Seonmi suddenly slaps her across the face, shocking everyone into silence. Seonmi stares her down and says firmly, "Stop this nonsense. Your behavior is unacceptable on set." It's revealed that the woman is the wife of the Daebong Paper Company's owner, which explains her attitude. But after Seonmi's bold action, the crew looks at him with newfound respect. Even the director begins to applaud. Seonmi, still stern, turns to the director and says, "Being rich doesn't mean we have to bow down to her. I'll act with Sungguk now." However, the woman continues to insult Sungguk and his family, sneering, "How can these low-class children be considered for modeling? They don't belong here." Hearing this, Sungguk's mother quickly covers his ears so he won't hear such hateful words. But Sungguk stays calm, thinking to himself that the red light of the camera was something he carried even into death in his past life, and that performing in front of it is his strongest skill. The scene shifts to him in front of the camera as Seonmi delivers his line. "These clothes look really clean, right?" Immediately, Seong-guk grabs the fabric, flashes a charming smile, and looks straight into the lens. His cuteness makes the director blush, and the assistant director exclaims, "How can someone be this adorable?" The director commands the crew, keep the camera on him, focus every lens on Seong-guk. He begins performing naturally, holding the fabric, playfully chewing it, then coughing a little. His spontaneity leaves everyone impressed. He confidently hits 25 different poses without hesitation. Seonmi is left stunned, wondering how such a young boy could perform like this. As per the script, Seonmi then lifts his hands and delivers the final line about the washing machine, ending the commercial. The director is thrilled, calling it the best child performance he's seen. The day fades into evening, but the wealthy woman is still fuming, unable to believe Seong-guk outshined her son. She continues insulting the crew, and the director finally responds, "Your son wasn't acting. He just cried the entire time." Meanwhile, Seong-guk and his mother are worn out from the ordeal, and the woman still refuses to let it go. Seonmi gently tells them, "Don't worry. People like her only cause trouble when others are around." Seong-guk's mother agrees, saying, "It's not our fault her son couldn't perform. That's not on us." This only enrages the woman more. But Seonmi now sees Seong-guk as an extraordinary talent, amazed at how quickly he completed the shoot. The rich woman then turns on the assistant director, screaming, "I paid a fortune to get my son on screen. How did this happen?" The assistant director steps back nervously until the main director steps in, placing a hand on his shoulder and reassuring him, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." With nothing left to say, the woman scoffs and storms off, announcing, "I'll never let my son be part of this ridiculous project again. I'll find a better director." She throws out a final threat. "You'll all regret this one day." After her departure, the director turns to Sungguk's mother and sincerely apologizes. "I'm really sorry for how you were treated today. That shouldn't have happened." Then adds with relief, "Honestly, if Sungguk hadn't stepped in as the backup actor, we would have been in serious trouble." To this, Sungguk just smiles and replies confidently, "It's fine." His energy and self-assurance shine through, already certain that more roles will come his way. The director already seems impressed. Finally, they prepare to leave. Seong-guk is cheerful, and his mother, seeing his bright face, feels joy as well. As they gather their things, Seonmi quietly thinks for a moment. then smirks and offers, "Let me give you a ride home." They accept and get into the van, where Seong-guk quickly falls asleep from exhaustion. Seon-mi looks at him fondly and says with a quiet chuckle, "He's even cuter when he's sleeping." Seong-guk's mother thanks him for the ride, grateful for his kindness. Then Seon-mi glances at Seong-guk and casually says he believes the boy is destined to become a major actor, mentioning how thanks to him, he managed to leave work early. Seon-mi goes on to say that Seong-guk's gaze toward the camera, his ability to grasp the flow of the shoot, and the way he never once showed a hint of nervousness stood out more than anything. He remembers how during filming, the young boy even reached up and gently adjusted Seon-mi's face to make sure his best angle would be caught on camera. It becomes clear to Seon-mi that this child was born with something rare, a natural gift for acting that doesn't need to be taught. Hearing this, Seong-guk's mother is left speechless, unable to believe how deeply her son's talent has affected a professional. Seon-mi, impressed beyond words, is about to say something when Seong-guk unexpectedly opens his eyes. Seon-mi smiles and extends a hand, saying she wants to offer him a contract with Sinsung Entertainment. And upon hearing this, Seong-guk flashes a mischievous grin. The next morning, the family receives a visit from the landlord who hands them an envelope containing 4 million won as Seong-guk's fee. He is stunned by the amount. But the real surprise comes when they realize the original payment was only 3 million, and the director, impressed by the boy's performance, added another million on his own. Laughter bubbles out of Seong-guk as he stares at the cash and thinks that acting might just be the perfect path for making money. In that moment, he imagines a future full of gold investments and smart stock deals. Meanwhile, his father, holding the envelope carefully, says he's never held this much money at once before. But Seong-guk notices the concern on his mother's face. She soon turns to the landlord and quietly brings up the matter of the actress who mentioned something yesterday. Then she hands the business card Seon-mi had given her, surprising everyone in the room. She tells them Seon-mi is from Sinsung Entertainment and has offered her son a spot with the agency, while Seong-guk listens with growing confidence. His mother continues to look unsure. His father finally speaks up, wondering aloud if becoming a celebrity at such a young age is the right path for their son. Unexpectedly, the landlord steps in and assures them that she'll look into the agency, the CEO, and how they manage their actors. Hearing this, Seong-guk's mother brightens and says she's relieved, still curious. Seong-guk starts to wonder why the landlord is going out of her way to help their family. The landlord smiles and congratulates him for doing such an excellent job and turns to leave. Just then, his mother hurries out after her and calls out, asking her to stop, catching her breath. She asks the landlord directly why she's always been so kind to them and why she cares so much about her son's future. She mentions how the landlord was the first to recognize his potential and has always defended them. The landlord pauses, then says she's simply trying to help a good family. She shares that she grew up alone and lived a frugal life, saving everyone instead of spending on luxuries so she could buy the building. And when she saw how Seong-guk's parents worked tirelessly and with love just to keep their child happy, she felt she couldn't just watch without helping. But she also worries that maybe she's overstepped and quietly apologizes. Seong-guk's mother, touched, smiles, and says from now on she wants to call her sister. The landlord looks surprised at first, then slowly smiles back and says there's finally a warm-hearted family in her building. And yes, she'd be honored to be called sister. Seong-guk's mother beams with joy, and Seong-guk, standing at the door listening, smiles too, while his father inside remains confused, wondering what his son is getting mixed up in. 2 weeks later at the restaurant where Seong-guk's father works, he happily announces that the boss told them to close early today just to watch Seong-guk's first commercial. The owner, a bald man who always clings to Seong-guk and won't stop pinching his cheeks, had insisted on it. Annoyed, Seong-guk thinks to himself that if this man weren't his dad's boss, he'd have dealt with him already, trying to stay patient. He sighs as his parents rush to the living room where the TV is on. Just then, the landlord arrives and says she hopes she's not too late. Seong-guk's mother welcomes her warmly and says she arrived right on time. The landlord laughs and says it feels like they're gathering to watch a movie together. Seong-guk's father calls everyone to sit down, and the moment finally arrives. His commercial comes on screen, and there he is, smiling adorably while playing with the laundry. When the actress asks if the clothes are clean, he bites the fabric, smiles sweetly, and holds it up with his bright expression. Watching this, everyone in the room turns red from the sheer cuteness, and without hesitation, Seong-guk's mother proudly gives him a score of 10 out of 10. Meanwhile, Seong-guk's father's boss slaps his chest dramatically, trying to settle his emotions, then starts clapping enthusiastically as he says, "Your son is unbelievably gifted, absolutely flawless." The landlord joins in, offering her own praise as she says, "Your boy is truly impressive." Hearing this fills Seong-guk's mother with a wave of relief and growing pride. Seong-guk silently thinks the editors really worked magic on this commercial. It could honestly win an award for the year, just as he's lost in thought. His father pulls him into a tight embrace. A phone rings and the restaurant boss answers. He listens briefly before announcing it's the director on the line. The director says he heard they were all gathered to watch the commercial and had to call, then asked to speak directly with Jungkook's father. In the background, a group of trendy young men sits together. One of them, striking in appearance, overhears the call and smirks knowingly. The scene then shifts to Jungkook's parents meeting the director in person. Jungkook quickly builds a friendly rapport with him, casually mentioning that he's just grown a tooth. The director, surprised by how well Jungkook speaks, comments on how much he's improved. His mother chuckles and says, "At this age, kids learn fast. Soon he'll be walking and talking like a little adult." The director nods thoughtfully and says, "Maybe we can give him more lines in the script then." Jungkook responds with confidence and says, "Hand me any script, I'll handle it with ease." They all take seats and the director begins explaining the reason for their meeting. As he passes over a set of documents, he reveals, "This is for a new reality show. Your son will live with 5 popular idols." At that moment, the door swings open and a cheerful voice says, "Hello." The parents turn to see a young man entering the room wearing a face mask. The director introduces him as Taeyong, leader of the idol group. Taeyong removes his mask to reveal his handsome face and Jungkook's mother gasps, then exclaims, "I've seen you on TV so many times, I never imagined I'd meet you in real life." Taeyong smiles shyly and says, "We're still learning. We're not that amazing yet, but we're trying to become a group people love." He adds politely, "Please support us." Hearing this makes Jungkook's father frown slightly, clearly jealous. And Jungkook thinks to himself that his dad looks ridiculous when he gets like this. The director, amused by the excitement, says, "Once the filming starts, you'll meet the rest of the members too." The mother, suddenly remembering the purpose of their visit, quickly pulls herself together. Jungkook teases her by saying, "Don't forget, Mom, you chose me over an idol." The director chuckles and says, "You're quick-witted. No need for long explanations with you." Pleased by the compliment, Jungkook thinks to himself, "Let's not overdo the praise. I'm not some kind of genius." But the director continues, saying, "I never expected a child to perform like this. It's extraordinary." Unsure how to respond, Jungkook simply says, "I'll do my best." Then adds, "I've seen shows like this before. The idea of idols taking care of a baby is something everyone enjoys. Kids, grandparents, whole families. That's why it became a national hit and even started a whole new genre of reality TV. Jungkook believes this could be his golden chance to shine as a child star. But his father's face grows increasingly worried. Eventually he speaks, saying, "If he keeps showing up on TV, won't he miss out on a normal childhood? I want him to grow up just being loved, not chased by fame." Jungkook protests, "Come on, Dad, don't be like that." The director seems caught off guard by the concern, but before he can reply, Taeyong gently steps in and says, "I also started out young. I even did a little acting. But being on camera doesn't mean a child will suffer. The spotlight isn't always harmful. Sometimes it helps shape a better future," he continues. "I didn't have much acting talent, but I found my strength in singing and dancing, and that's what led me here. This show feels like it was made specifically for your son, so trust him." The father falls silent, thinking hard, and finally says, "If this really brings a bright future for him, then I'll agree. Just promise me you'll look after my boy." Satisfied, the director begins preparing the contract. They take a few photos of Jungkook, get his costume ready, and start making arrangements for the first shoot. On the brightly lit set, all 5 idol members stood posing confidently in stylish outfits. Leading them was Taeyong. Beside him was Lucas, then Jaehyun with his striking pink hair. Next came the tall and stoic Byung-chan, and finally Michael with a sharp, intimidating stare. Together they faced Jungkook and introduced themselves in unison. Jungkook's mother stood frozen, overwhelmed by the sight of such popular idols all gathered in front of her. Her husband, meanwhile, fumed quietly, his face reddening with jealousy as one of the idols casually chatted with his wife. Jungkook watched this with amusement and chuckled to himself. The director clapped his hands and said, "This show has a lot riding on it, so give it your all." The idols shouted back with enthusiasm, promising to do their best. But as Jungkook looked at them, something strange stirred in him. A wave of familiarity hit him. He recalled seeing these exact idols in his previous life performing at company events, especially Michael, who now approached with a rude tone and said, "You're not that cute," annoyed. Jungkook swatted his hand away and thought, "Don't touch me so freely." Watching this, the team leader scolded Michael sharply and said, "Go wash your hands before touching the baby. They're dirty." Michael shot a glare in response. Clearly displeased, Jungkook's irritation deepened. He remembered Michael being half Korean and half American, always causing problems in his former life. and that uneasy feeling hadn't changed, determined not to let anything ruin this opportunity. Sungkook refocused. He laughed sweetly, winning over the rest of the members who whispered among themselves about how adorable he was. Only Michael stood aside with a twisted smirk, a scheme clearly forming in his mind as he muttered under his breath, "Just wait and see what I'll do." The director then began to explain the filming plan, saying, "We're starting with 3 days of pre-shooting here at Just Storm. We'll use vlog-style footage to create the first 3 episodes, then depending on the public's reaction, we'll move forward with regular episodes." He added that the assistant director would be on site during the day and that CCTV cameras would keep rolling even overnight. Then, with a light chuckle, he informed Seongguk's parents, "You two will need to stay at a hotel during the shoot." Seongguk's father frowned immediately, refusing to leave his child alone. He agreed to keep in touch through phone calls, but remained visibly uneasy. Their leader stepped in to reassure him and said, "We'll care for him as if he's our own, like a mother would." Slowly, the parents gave their reluctant approval. The assistant director stepped forward and announced, "We'll begin with the opening narration scene. The official voiceover will be added later." The narration described 5 young men living in a semi-basement in Seoul under the name Just, dreaming of idol stardom, until one day a baby arrives and changes everything. The idols stared at Seongguk while he looked back, equally confused. His mother flipped through the script and asked why no one had lines. Someone off-screen replied casually, "It's a reality show." The assistant director chimed in and said, "Maybe he just doesn't know how to react yet." The director paused filming for a moment. The idols exchanged unsure glances, none of them knowing how to handle the situation. Seongguk quickly realized they were all rookies, and he had to step in somehow, unfamiliar with the space and faces. He began to cry. The leader panicked and said, "We need to calm him down." He picked Seongguk up awkwardly, but the crying continued. Another member pointed out that he was holding the baby wrong. Jaehyun, with his pink hair, gently took Seongguk instead, and within moments the crying stopped. Everyone stared in disbelief. Jaehyun flashed a confident smile and said, "Babies always respond to good-looking faces." That set off a round of playful bickering among the group. Seongguk quietly observed and thought, "Each one of them has such a clear role. Taehyung is the dependable leader, almost like a dad. Jaehyun is the soft-spoken narcissist with a gentle heart. Lucas gives off the relaxed older brother vibe, and Byung-seon is quiet but caring. This cast is perfect for a pretend family." From the corner, Michael watched silently, starting to realize how challenging it would be to care for a baby. Seongguk pointed at Michael while thinking, "If I were the director, I'd cast him as the villain without hesitation." But for the success of the show, he chose to keep that thought to himself. Jaehyun noticed Seongguk's serious expression and whispered to another member, "Why does he look so mad?" The moment shifted quickly as the next task was announced. Someone said, "Time to change the diaper." Their leader hesitated and admitted, "I've never done this before." Michael stepped forward and claimed, "I've done it plenty. I had 3 younger siblings." He confidently laid Seongguk down and began preparing. But just then, Seongguk mischievously peed straight onto Michael's face, grinning afterward and saying, "Refreshing." Before laughing out loud, Michael jumped back furious, ready to react. But the leader stopped him and said, "Hey, calm down, he's just a baby." Laughter echoed around the room as everyone realized how funny the moment was. And Seongguk silently celebrated, knowing he had just given their show its first viral scene. The director announced a 2-hour break before filming resumed for the evening. The idol members all collapsed onto nearby couches and chairs with exhausted groans. Their leader let out a deep sigh and said, "If we just had a script to follow, things would be a whole lot easier." While the others rested, Seongguk beamed with delight when he spotted his mother entering the set carrying a bunch of ripe bananas. As he eagerly munched on them, he thought, "These were my favorite in my past life too, but somehow they taste even better now." Nearby, the leader struck up a conversation with Seongguk's father, who spoke with polite formality and admiration. Laughing softly, Taehyung told him, "You don't need to be so formal with me. Just talk casually." With a warm smile, the leader added, "Your son is something else. Whenever I'm near him, it's like I'm pulled into the scene without trying. It's like he's guiding us all without saying a word, and that pink-haired guy feels like his mirror. The way they match each other's energy is just uncanny." Chuckling, Seongguk's father replied, "It's just coincidence. He's still just a baby after all." They both laughed together, but not far away. Michael stepped out of the shower, still brooding. His expression soured even more as he heard their voices praising Seongguk again. Growing bitter, he wondered how the baby kept stealing the spotlight so easily. Passing the assistant director, Michael asked what was coming up next. The assistant director answered, "It's time for Seongguk's evening meal." Annoyed, Michael scoffed and said, "No need to worry, I'll make it myself." Heading to the kitchen, he prepared the food, but secretly added a generous amount of chili sauce, hiding a wicked grin as he imagined the outcome. Meanwhile, the assistant director discreetly set up a hidden camera nearby. As the evening approached, the crew stepped out for a short break, and the idols gathered together. Discussing how tired they felt and how hungry they were, one of them complained that he hadn't eaten yet. Their leader suggested, "Let's just cook some ramen. Quick and simple. We should make something for Seongguk too." At that moment, Michael returned holding a tray with Seongguk's meal and announced with a forced smile, "I made this specially for him." Surprised, the leader blinked and said, "That's unexpected coming from you. You've been annoyed with him all day. What changed?" Michael grinned wider and insisted, "I want to feed him myself this time." Something in his voice made Seongguk suspicious. When Michael sat down and lifted a spoonful towards him, Seongguk stared at it, then scooped up a bite and held it out to Michael instead. Curious, the leader leaned closer and said, "Hey, let me try a bite too." Michael's smile faltered instantly as panic flashed in his eyes. He shook his head and refused to eat, which only deepened Seongguk's suspicion. When he insisted again, Michael pushed the spoon away. The leader raised an eyebrow and said, "This is taking a while for one bite. Let me try it then." As Seongguk fed him the spoonful, the leader's expression changed immediately. Sweat broke out on his forehead and he winced from the burn in his mouth. Noticing this, Jae-hyun stepped forward and asked, "What's going on?" The moment he saw the leader's reaction, Seongguk narrowed his eyes and turned his glare toward Michael. Thinking that this guy had crossed a line, muttering to himself, he said, "He made a mistake messing with me. Now I'll have to show him what real trouble looks like." The leader caught his breath and explained, "This food is filled with hot sauce. Like way too much. Who put this in?" Everyone turned to Michael, who finally admitted with a shrug, "I added it. Thought it'd be fun to see what happened if the baby ate it." Their leader frowned deeply and told him, "Whether it was fun or not doesn't matter. That was completely wrong and you crossed a serious line." Jae-hyun suddenly stepped in furiously, grabbing Michael by the collar and shouted, "What kind of entertainment is this supposed to be? Do you realize he could have gotten sick or worse from that?" The tension thickened until the leader knelt down in front of Seongguk and sincerely said, "I'm really sorry for what Michael did." Still glaring, Michael muttered, "There's no need to say sorry to a kid. He's too young to understand all this anyway." Standing up slowly, the leader responded firmly, "He understands more than you think. And even if he didn't, that wouldn't excuse your behavior. You owe him an apology." Seongguk grinned slightly and thought to himself, "These guys might have a shot after all." Then with a laugh, he said, "Fine, I'll show you how this is done from now on." A few days later at Seongguk's house, his parents sat in stunned silence while the landlord, holding a printed report, said with excitement, "The first episode of Just Baby is already making waves. It's hitting a 20% viewership rating before even airing this Friday." Blinking in confusion, Seongguk's mother asked, "Is that considered high?" Smiling, the landlord nodded and explained, "For NBC's top variety shows, the average sits around 15%. So this is way above expectations. And not only that, the director called me personally to confirm that the show has officially been picked up for regular broadcast." Clapping her hands lightly, she turned to Seongguk and said, "Congratulations, kid, you're really doing something big." Laughing to himself, Seongguk thought this was all going according to plan, every step bringing him closer to his goal, becoming a chaebol and reaching the top. Raising a brow, the landlord muttered, "This boy's reactions never feel normal. There's something odd about him." Then Seongguk's mother leaned forward and said, "By the way, someone from Shinsung Entertainment dropped by earlier to congratulate us. They said the CEO wants to meet in person and invited us to visit whenever we're free." Frowning slightly, the landlord crossed her arms and said, "I remember telling you I'd look into that company. Well, the infrastructure is shaky at best, and there are disturbing rumors about their CEO. Some even say he's got ties to the underworld." The entire room fell quiet, the weight of those words hanging heavy in the air, staring at her in disbelief. Seongguk's father finally asked, "Then should we still go?" Thinking carefully, the landlord answered, "You probably should. Since he requested the meeting himself, refusing might seem disrespectful, and that could backfire." At the mention of the company's name, Seongguk's mind began to spin as a memory clawed its way forward. Something from his previous life. His eyes narrowed and his hand curled into a tight fist. He suddenly realized exactly who the CEO was, and why they needed to stay far away. Cut to the office of Shinsung Entertainment, seated across from the CEO, Seongguk tried to warn his parents in a low voice. "If you sign anything here, it could destroy you. The consequences won't just end with a bad deal. It'll be worse." Welcoming them with a wide smile, the CEO gestured to the chairs and said, "Please sit. Thank you for coming." Bowing slightly, the landlord responded politely, "Thank you for the invitation." Getting straight to the point, the CEO leaned forward and said, "I've been following Seongguk's rise closely, and I'm ready to offer him a life-changing opportunity." As he spoke, it became clear he had done an alarming amount of research on the boy. Watching him with clenched fists, Seongguk struggled to hold back his anger. Quietly, the landlord asked, Can I ask why you invited us here personally? With a signal, the CEO's assistant handed over a thick contract. The landlord flipped through it and gasped, realizing what it contained. Calmly, the CEO explained, "This is a 10-year exclusive deal. We'll turn Seong-guk into a top-level actor, just like Seon-mi." But as the landlord scanned the details, her face lost all color. She revealed the shocking clause. "It's a 70-30 profit split in the company's favor. 70% to you and only 30 to Seong-guk." Frowning deeply, Seong-guk thought this was nothing but a trap, a modern-day form of enslavement, and the CEO just smiled smugly as if expecting them to accept without question. He probably thought these poor folks would be too flattered to resist. Glaring straight at him, Seong-guk finally spoke. "Your company and these filthy tricks, they never change." Taking a breath, he revealed what he remembered. "In my past life, Shin Sung-jong, the man sitting in front of us, had deep connections to the Samjong Group, particularly with Vice Chairman John Jae-hyung. My father knew him through Seon-mi, and funneled advertising money directly into this man's hands. In return, Shin Sung-jong made sure his celebrities appeared at every Samjong event. But in the end, he was exposed and imprisoned for blackmail and assault against his own actors. And the truth is, this company isn't just unethical, it's dangerous." Smiling like he hadn't heard a thing, the CEO said, "I've never seen a child actor with this much talent before. That's why I want this deal in place now." Confident, he added, "With our help, Seong-guk could become a global superstar, the kind of fame you can't even imagine. But his real thoughts were darker. We need to tie him down while he's still a hot topic. Drain every bit of the money we can, then toss him aside the moment he loses public interest. And since this kid has no serious backers, he's the perfect easy target." Suddenly interrupting the conversation, the landlord raised her voice and said, "We won't be signing this contract." Hearing those words, Seong-guk felt a surge of joy he could barely contain. Leaning back with a smirk, the CEO asked calmly, "May I know why you're rejecting such a generous offer?" Keeping her tone firm, the landlord replied, "It's not just about the 70-30 profit split in your favor. The bigger problem is the 10-year term. Seong-guk's worth is only going to increase. Yet this deal treats him like a disposable tool, used for a decade and then tossed aside when he's older." Brushing off her concerns, the CEO said, "I understand you're being protective, but child actors don't have long careers. They burn bright for a moment, then fade. They're nowhere near as profitable as adult actors." Frowning deeply, Seong-guk clenched his tiny fists, angry at the way he was being discussed like a product. "It's not just that," CEO said. "If he loses his looks as he grows up, what will happen?" His mother quickly covered his ears and scolded them. "How can you speak about my child like that while he's right here?" Glaring at the CEO, Seong-guk muttered under his breath, "You punk. If I had my old body, I'd end this here and now." Watching the CEO's smug face, his thoughts boiled. This arrogant frog has no idea who he's talking to. "I'm still John Seong, just in a smaller frame." Standing up from her seat, the landlord said sharply, "We're not moving forward with this contract." Narrowing his eyes, the CEO turned toward her and asked, "You're not even his mother. Why are you interfering?" Just as Seong-guk's mother opened her mouth to argue, the landlord calmly spoke first. "I'm his manager, and that makes his welfare my responsibility." Then she turned to the mother and said, "You should go wait outside. With my experience in advertising, I can tell without a doubt that this contract is garbage, not even worth discussing." Looking at them coldly, the CEO didn't push further but warned them. "Walking away from this will be a mistake. In this industry, shutting us out means shutting yourself out too." Smirking, Seong-guk thought to himself, "There it is, finally showing his real face." The landlord didn't respond. Instead, turned around and walked straight out without a single word. Outside, the landlord marched ahead with anger written all over her face, while Seong-guk's mother caught up and gently asked if she was all right. Seong-guk, still burning with frustration, snapped first, saying how awful it was to pressure someone, especially a girl, into signing a contract, calling the CEO a disgusting excuse for a man, barely even human. The landlord then looked at his mother and responded calmly, saying maybe she had felt scared in that moment, but there was no reason to tie her child to such a filthy company. Insisting that there were better agencies out there with decent leadership, she added that Seong-guk deserved to be part of a company that wouldn't exploit him. Then she turned and gestured toward the bus, signaling them to move along. But just before they could go, Seong-guk's mother suddenly called out, her voice hesitant as she asked the landlord if she would consider becoming her son's manager. Seong-guk immediately looked over, his heart skipping at the thought, thinking to himself how perfect that would be, realizing that as his path in the industry grew, he'd face more people like that CEO, and having someone trustworthy to guide him would be invaluable. He studied the landlord's stern expression, noting that her bluntness hid a sincere kind of care. She hesitated and admitted she wasn't experienced in the entertainment world, but before she could say more, Seong-guk tugged on her sleeve and looked up at her with eyes full of hope. silently pointing at himself to express his wish. "You be my comrade." The message clear without words. The landlord paused, her heart softening as she saw how much it meant to him. Then his mother added quietly that they truly had no knowledge of how this world worked. No clue what steps to take next, and they needed someone like her. Someone they could trust, to make sure Seongguk stayed safe and didn't get caught in something dark. Hearing this, the landlord's cheeks turned red, as if a new sense of purpose had just taken root inside her. She gave a small nod and said she would do her best to become a proper manager. Seongguk and his mother immediately pulled her into a grateful hug. Later at the bus stop, laughter filled the air as the landlord joked by asking how much she'd be paid for all this. To which Seongguk's mother grinned and replied she could ask for as much as she wanted. The landlord laughed and said she didn't really need money, then asked what their next step should be. The scene then shifted to nighttime, in a tall office tower, where the CEO stood near the window with a man behind him. This man had been digging into the landlord's background, and in a very short time had uncovered everything about her life and the company she worked for, including the fact that she wasn't Seongguk's real manager. The CEO gave a cold smirk and muttered that if they didn't want to come under his wing, then they'd soon learn how harsh the industry could be. Picking up his phone, he made a call and ordered reporters to be sent. The next morning, Seongguk and Michael sat together, eating bananas, with Michael chewing angrily even though he didn't like bananas, doing it just to annoy Seongguk. The group's leader asked him why, and Michael claimed he did like bananas, blaming Seongguk for never sharing, saying he always hugged them all. Seongguk was clearly annoyed too, unhappy about giving up his precious bananas, and it showed on his face. The assistant director and director nearby laughed at the silly rivalry, but the rest of the group looked drained from dealing with their endless bickering. Their leader especially complained that Michael acted like a little kid. Time passed and winter came, snow blanketing everything, and Seongguk's mother arrived. Her belly round with a new baby on the way, the director welcomed her kindly, asking if she'd had any trouble with the trip, especially in her condition. He told her she didn't need to push herself so hard, but she smiled and said watching her son perform gave her real joy, and she wouldn't miss it for the world. The director nodded and reminded her that if anything happened, she should inform them right away. She thanked him for his concern. Then the director brought up how Michael always fought with Seongguk, but admitted that audiences loved their chaotic energy. Their little quarrels seemed to charm viewers. Even though sometimes Michael took things too far, the director confessed he worried about how it might affect her as a mother. She reassured him, saying she trusted him and was happy people found joy in her son's interactions, even if they bickered. Hearing all this, the landlord, who now deeply cared for Seongguk, suddenly stood and hurried to check on him, worried that Michael might go over the line one day. Later at lunch, the idol group sat exhausted, and Seongguk had eaten way too many bananas, now looking stuffed and sleepy, while Michael stared at him with narrow eyes full of irritation. Seongguk didn't even need to look to know Michael was mentally cursing him. Their earlier fight had gone too far this time, though it was usually harmless and playful. Seongguk explained that Michael had crossed a boundary, so he decided to teach him a small lesson. He tried to point and speak, but the words wouldn't come out clearly. Michael didn't understand what he was trying to say, but he felt that Seongguk was insulting him, like he always did, constantly putting him down, and he started to believe that maybe Seongguk didn't like him at all. Then without thinking, he suddenly pinched Seongguk's soft cheek, and he didn't hold back. It hurt more than it should have. Seongguk immediately burst into tears, wailing loudly as pain and betrayal rushed over him, thinking, how could someone hurt a kid like this? What kind of person does that? The landlord, now acting as his manager, saw the entire thing and rushed over, while Michael shouted in frustration, asking why Seongguk was crying so loudly over a small pinch, saying it wasn't even that hard, but the landlord didn't hold back either as she snapped at Michael, demanding to know why he thought it was okay to pinch a small child like that. Michael tried to defend himself, repeating that it wasn't serious, but she cut him off, saying firmly that she knew Seongguk well enough to know he wasn't the kind of boy to cry easily, and if he was screaming like this, then it had to mean something. She added sharply that Michael was always trying to hurt him, always going too far. And right then, through his tears, Seongguk looked up at her with a faint smile and called her perfect, saying she did a great job, because he had noticed too, how even during the recent shoots, Michael kept trying to mess with him, kept trying to get under his skin. The landlord gave Michael a serious warning, and his frustration finally boiled over as he shouted back, asking why she was acting so protective over a kid who didn't matter. But her reply came fast and cold as she reminded him that Seongguk was the reason he got those commercial deals in the first place, and Michael's face twisted with anger. But the landlord said nothing else. She just quietly lifted Seongguk into her arms and warned Michael again not to lay a hand on him. This time, the tone in her voice made Michael pause, her words shaking him more than he expected, as he muttered under his breath, cursing Seongguk and thinking bitterly that he didn't come all the way to Korea just to babysit some kid. Sensing all of this, Sungkook pulled a strange face on purpose just to get on Michael's nerves, and Michael couldn't even say anything back. Not after what happened during the hot sauce incident. Everyone around them just assumed he was jealous and always picking fights. Before he could process anything more, his phone suddenly rang. Still annoyed, he picked it up with a sharp tone and said he was busy. But as soon as he heard the voice on the other end, he went completely still, because the call was from Shin Sung Entertainment. The next morning, the director calls another meeting, this time with Jungkook's mother and his manager present. The idol group also arrives with their leader. Before anything is discussed, the director surprises everyone by handing out bonuses. Jungkook's mother is stunned that they are receiving extra money again. The director explains that viewership has exploded and the audience is absolutely loving the show. He reminds them there's not much time left since the final episode is approaching quickly. While he's talking, Jungkook is more focused on counting the money than listening. Soon the meeting officially begins and the topic is revealed to be the upcoming Christmas special. They're planning a 90-minute feature, hoping it will resonate deeply with the viewers. Jungkook begins walking and running around the room, which delights the director who views it as part of the boy's natural training process. Jungkook feels the same way since he's been working and running non-stop lately without a break. Then the Christmas costumes are unveiled, and they're incredibly cute. So much so that Jungkook's mother looks entranced by them. The director is about to dive into more details when the assistant director suddenly bursts in, shouting that there's a problem. He holds up a newspaper with a headline accusing the parents of exploiting their child for money. The article targets Jungkook by name, calling him a victim of parental greed. Soon after the television begins broadcasting the same story, news anchors are talking about Jungkook and claiming he's being forced into work by his own family. A bold headline flashes across the screen, accusing the parents of exploitation. The director is livid and shouts that these reporters are just out to stir trouble with no real evidence. But despite his anger, the damage is already beginning. The public's opinion starts shifting as people begin to believe the rumors. Jungkook's mother listens and is devastated by what she hears. As an ordinary person, the accusations hurt her deeply and she begins to cry, whispering in fear about what they should do now. The director tries to calm her, saying this is just jealousy from people who hate seeing others succeed, and that these kinds of stories always pop up when someone becomes famous. Some will support you and others will try to pull you down. But his words don't stop her tears. The landlord then steps in and gently offers his support, promising to look into who might have been behind the article. At that moment, Jungkook stands up with determination and faces his mother. Although his speech is still imperfect, he tells her not to be afraid. And even with the stumbles in his words, she understands completely and stops crying. Jungkook turns toward the director to speak, but his father quietly grabs his arm and tells him not to blame the director, because he isn't responsible for this mess. Jungkook starts thinking fast. Whoever published the article clearly wants to damage his family's name and they need to act quickly. He glances at the director and realizes that with his many industry connections, he's probably the best person to act fast. The director catches the look in Jungkook's eyes and immediately understands. He declares that since the issue stems from the broadcast, it's his duty and the station's responsibility to resolve it. Jungkook agrees without hesitation, knowing it's the right move. The director adds that reporters might be waiting outside their home and it's safer to stay inside for now, since the press could ask anything at any moment. He then gently advises Jungkook's mother to take a short break. She hesitates, worried about who will care for her son if she steps away. But the landlord kindly steps up again and offers to take care of Jungkook himself. The mother is overwhelmed with gratitude, feeling like someone is finally offering real help. Before leaving, the director reassures them once more, promising they'll fix the situation as soon as possible. That night, the director meets privately with the assistant director and asks directly about the leak. The details in the article seem to have come from someone with inside knowledge, which makes the director suspicious. He remembers that the assistant director used to take on side jobs for wealthy clients just for money, and starts to wonder if he could be the one behind it. But the assistant director is taken aback and insists he would never do that, reminding the director that after almost being fired, he's worked hard to change and stay clean. Hearing this only adds to the director's anxiety, because if it wasn't him, then someone else on the inside is feeding information to the press. As time passes, Christmas finally arrives. The streets are glowing with lights and filled with laughter. People move around joyfully, and two girls stand under the decorations, chatting and laughing brightly. They look radiant under the festive glow. Just then, a woman walks past them wearing large sunglasses and a mask to hide her face. It's Jungkook's mother, trying her best not to be recognized. One of the girls whispers, "Why would someone wear sunglasses at night? It's not even that cold." They giggle softly. Meanwhile, Jungkook sits awkwardly in a stroller feeling completely humiliated since he's far too old for it. But his mom had no choice. She needed a breath of fresh air after being stuck inside for so long. Her real reason for coming out is to meet her husband. Jungkook wishes he could be on set again, acting and doing what he loves. But stepping outside is risky right now. Even a single photo could make things worse. As they pass by, the girls continue talking about the show. They laugh and gush over the Christmas special, praising Taehyung and the adorable baby star. Hearing them talk about her son so fondly brings tears to the mother's eyes and fills her heart with pride. But suddenly the mood shifts when one of the girls mentions a new article with more serious claims. She says, the new one talks about the parents too and says they're greedy and that the baby is manipulative. Sunguk hears everything and feels anger welling up inside him. Then the crosswalk light turns green, but his mother doesn't move. She's frozen, overcome with emotion. Just then, her husband rushes up smiling, saying it's cold and she didn't have to come all this way. But as soon as he sees her face, he stops talking. She's crying and he doesn't understand why. Sunguk looks at her and realizes how fragile and soft-hearted she really is. These cruel words from strangers have deeply wounded her. Right there, he makes a silent promise to help her and to fix the damage. The next day, Seongguk's father storms into the director's office full of frustration, saying his wife is crying every day now and the articles just won't stop. He pleads, "We can't keep living like this. We need to put an end to it." The director lowers his head and responds with regret, saying the station is doing its best to control the media, but it's difficult because the child's fame is attracting constant attention. Still, the father doesn't back down and insists something must be done. The director finally says, "I've actually been thinking we should do a live interview to address everything properly and clear up the rumors." The father pauses, unsure, imagining a chaotic room full of shouting reporters. Sensing this, the director quickly clarifies, "No, it won't be like that. It'll be private and pre-recorded. Just air it as if it were live to keep things calm and clear." The scene then shifts to December 31st. They're filming a cozy segment for the year's end featuring their beloved Seongguk. Everyone is smiling and capturing precious memories. And later, on January 7th, a new episode will air, with the staff leaving a warm message for fans, thanking them for their endless support. On another side of the studio, Seongguk and his mother prepare nervously for the upcoming interview. Everything is set up gently and calmly. The father sees it now and realizes it's nothing like the press circus he imagined. One of the crew members encourages them, saying, "Just talk like it's a normal scene. There's no need to worry." Just as everything is about to begin, a knock echoes from the door. The assistant director quickly heads over to check. Inside the room, Seongguk's father quietly speaks to his wife, saying softly, "You're pregnant and we've already endured so much. And now this interview too. But it's all for Seongguk. I want him to grow up without all this chaos weighing him down. I want him to be happy. That's why I'm doing this." Nearby, the manager kneels beside Seongguk, dressed in a sweet little outfit that makes him look even more charming. With a chuckle, the manager says, "I was honestly terrified when your dad said we were going to do a live interview, but now I think it's the right decision." Silently, Seongguk reflects on his parents, thinking how they're just ordinary people doing their best to survive. He never imagined his father would step up so bravely like this. And he wonders why now. Why his father found the courage. Lost in thought, he doesn't notice his mother approaching until she lifts him gently and smiles, saying, "You look so handsome." She wraps her arms around him and pulls him close, then whispers softly in his ear, "Believe in us. Your father and I will make sure all the ugly lies disappear." As her voice fades, Seongguk starts to cry, realizing just how much love his parents have for him and how hard they're fighting. With teary eyes, he clings tightly to his mother, reminding himself not to fear the cameras anymore. In the background, the landlady and assistant director watch silently, deeply moved by the touching moment. But then another knock hits the door and the assistant director hurries to open it, thinking the main director had finally arrived. Instead, chaos floods in. A crowd of reporters rushes through the doorway. The assistant director stumbles back, alarmed. He runs back into the room and warns everyone in a panic. Somehow the press found them, and there's no doubt someone leaked the location. Outside, the idol team leader pushes through the mass of reporters and finally makes it inside. The room is suddenly flooded with harsh lights and camera flashes. The director steps in overwhelmed, raising his voice as he says, "This isn't what we planned. This is far too many. These parents are just normal people. This pressure is too much for anyone," but the reporters ignore him and continue shouting, asking questions, snapping endless photos, demanding answers about the article. Seongguk's parents stand frozen, overwhelmed by the unexpected scene. This was supposed to be a calm and quiet session, their first ever interview, and now it feels like a storm. Still, his father steps forward and tries to restore order, saying, "Please ask one question at a time. My wife is expecting, and this noise and flashing is hurting her." But one loud reporter cuts in without sympathy, saying, "We don't want excuses. We want answers about the accusations." Finally, Seongguk's father takes a deep breath and speaks with strength, saying, That article is nothing but lies. We've never treated our son the way they say. It's true we've struggled. We came from nothing. We grew up in an orphanage and had no one but each other. But we worked hard to build a life. We're proud of our child. He's gifted and kind, and we never forced him into anything for money. We're not greedy. We're just doing our best to give him love and a home. Then one of the directors cuts in with a cold tone saying, "How can we trust your words? We've seen your finances. How much of that came from your child's work?" His voice corners them with suspicion. Seong-guk watches all of it and feels his frustration rising. He knows this is unfair. Suddenly, he leaps out of the landlady's arms and walks forward with tiny steps, then spreads his arms wide and shouts with all his might, "Stop hurting my mom and dad." In his heart, he wants to say more, to call that man cruel, but his words still aren't strong enough. Even so, the room falls silent. The baby's bold voice catches everyone off guard, and finally the staff starts taking control. The director and his team step in ordering the reporters to leave. The idol team leader tells the assistant director to cut the feed immediately. As things settle, Seong-guk walks to his father and tries to speak through his small voice. His father pulls him into a hug and says, "I'm sorry, son. Your dad's not very good at this kind of thing." They both turn to look at his mother, who now looks pale and unwell. She's holding her stomach in pain, and in that moment both father and son are struck with fear, realizing the stress from this disaster might have gone too far and put her in danger. Inside the ambulance, Seong-guk's mother lies down with her eyes closed, her breathing heavy as Seong-guk and his father sit beside her, visibly anxious, trying to keep it together. The father leans closer and says with a trembling voice, "Just hang in there a little more. We're almost at the hospital." But as he speaks, the tears start to fall and he can't hold back anymore. Trying to comfort him, the mother forces a faint smile and whispers, "I'm alright. Don't worry about me." But Seong-guk hears her words and feels a deep panic stir inside, thinking to himself, "How can you say you're fine when I can clearly see you're in pain? You can barely breathe, and yet you still try to reassure us." Inside his thoughts race. He knows nothing about childbirth or hospitals. In his past life, he had no wife. Not even a girlfriend. None of this is familiar, and the fear that something terrible might happen to his mom nearly crushes him. Then the scene shifts to a brighter moment as the assistant director and the director watch with wide eyes. What they're seeing makes them pause. Seong-guk is holding his newborn baby brother. The scene's so touching that they both can't help but stare in awe. Everyone in the room is smiling, happiness filling the space. Approaching the mother gently, the assistant director asks with concern, "Are you feeling okay?" "Nothing hurts, right?" With a tired but warm smile, the mother replies softly, "I'm alright, really." Still worried, the assistant director glances at the baby and jokes, "Seong-guk is already so handsome, but this little one might actually outshine him." No surprise though, considering how gorgeous their parents are. Reaching out to pinch the baby's cheek, he gets stopped abruptly as Seong-guk slaps his hand away and says firmly, "Don't touch him, your hands aren't clean yet." Thinking to himself, "Seriously, go wash first before putting your fingers on my brother?" The assistant director laughs quietly and admits, "Wow, he's really acting like a big brother now." In his heart, he recalls how in his former life his siblings always caused trouble, but this time he makes a silent vow. He'll raise his little brother with care and protect him with everything he has. Meanwhile, the director walks over to the mother and speaks with concern. "After everything that just happened, people are panicking. Right after the interview, you were rushed to the hospital. Now the viewers are worried and news outlets are spiraling. Something isn't right." He adds suspiciously, "We found the person who leaked our location to the press." The scene cuts sharply to a confrontation. The idol group leader stands in front of Michael and says calmly, "Explain yourself. How did the media find out where we were?" Pretending to be confused. Michael replies, "What do you mean? I don't know anything." But the group leader narrows his eyes and explains, "Something has been off for a while. Only a few people knew where we were filming, and I always noticed the tension between you and Seong-guk. So I had Lucas keep an eye on you. And now we know the truth. You were the one who passed information to the outside. And the person you gave it to was none other than Shin Sung-jung, the CEO of Shin Sung Entertainment. And it doesn't stop there. Even Seong-guk's manager was secretly watched by that company. And the reporters who spread those damaging stories were all linked to Shin Sung." A video clip plays next. A recording of a conversation between Michael and the CEO, exposing everything. Fury builds among the group members. They can't believe someone from their own team betrayed Seong-guk's family like this. The leader steps forward and says sternly, "Both you and that CEO need to take full responsibility for the damage you caused." The scene jumps to a crowd of reporters surrounding the CEO, shouting questions, asking, "Was it you who ordered those articles?" But the CEO brushes it off, pretending to know nothing. Back in the hospital room, the atmosphere is tense. The family still can't believe Michael was behind the disaster. The director clenches his fists and says firmly, Michael must face the consequences for what he did. The group leader agrees completely and adds, his actions sent Seongguk's mother to the hospital and caused so much stress. Yet, despite it all, the family remains kind and composed. With calm voices, they say, it's all right now. We're safe and grateful for this quiet hospital room. Later that day, people from the community speak among themselves. Many of the older folks express joy, saying, Seongguk's family deserves happiness because they are genuinely good people. The ones who spread hate now have nothing left but frustration. The rude reporters are being sued by both the director and Seongguk's manager, ensuring this won't be forgotten. And to give the family some peace, the director personally gives them a 2-month break. Speaking with a kind smile, he says, you've already given us more than enough content. Please use this time to rest. Especially you. He tells the mother gently, you just gave birth. Focus on your recovery and spend this time with your family. And with those words, he steps out quietly. As the season changes once more, cherry blossoms flutter gently across the television screen, painting everything in soft pink. A girl watches the scene quietly, her eyes fixed on the petals as if mesmerized. Stepping out of the steamy bathroom with the towel still around her shoulders, she walks straight into the arms of a man waiting nearby. The man is none other than Seongguk's father from his previous life. The atmosphere turns romantic for a moment. But just as things are about to escalate, something on the TV catches the girl's attention, and she pulls back suddenly. Pointing to the screen, she says, that child. Glancing at the TV, the man furrows his brows and asks, you know him? With a slight nod, she reminds him, I introduced him to you on set, remember? He was filming that day. Thinking back slowly, the man replies, now I see why he looked familiar. But his tone changes as suspicion creeps in. Lately, he's seen the boy appear far too often, in different places at unexpected times. Now, suddenly, he's the center of attention. Brushing it off casually, the girl explains, that's because he's brilliant. Pure talent like his doesn't go unnoticed. I really believe he's destined to become a star. Crossing his arms, the man mutters, he's just a kid. What if this is just temporary? Being popular now doesn't mean much for the future. Smiling knowingly, the girl says, and yet you're the type who can spot real talent. If even you're curious about him, that must mean something. Then lowering her voice, she adds, and didn't you hear about that mess with Shinsung Entertainment? They tried something shady with him, but it backfired. Now the company's reputation is crumbling. They targeted his family too, and I'm already working on cutting ties with them. Leaning in closer, she suggests, it might actually be a smart move for you to invest in that child's future. You're good at recognizing potential. Raising an eyebrow, the man considers her words before replying, that doesn't sound like a bad idea after all. The scene then transitions to Seongguk's modest home where the scent of fresh seaweed soup fills the air. His manager hands him a bowl and watches as his face lights up the second he smells it. Without wasting a second, he digs in, slurping happily while thinking, who knew she could cook this well? This is amazing. After serving Seongguk, the manager brings a bowl to his mother, who accepts it with gratitude in her eyes. Touched by the gesture, she says kindly, even though you're our manager, you don't ask for anything. You've done so much already, you even cook for us. At least let us make you a meal sometimes. Smiling warmly, the manager replies, you said we're like family, didn't you? Then there's no reason to treat each other like strangers. I'll always cook for my family. Hearing those words, the mother's eyes soften and she smiles brightly. Meanwhile, Seongguk frowns at his baby brother who is reaching for his bowl. Nudging the little hand away, he says firmly, this is my soup, you drink your milk. Seeing this, both the mother and the manager laugh heartily, commenting between giggles. These days, little Mingu copies everything his big brother does. Their bond looks strong already. Watching them, the mother adds, we really don't have to worry about their relationship. Seongguk sighs deeply as frustration builds inside him. He thinks, raising a baby is torture. He cries all the time, doesn't sleep, and clings to me like glue. I can't even use the bathroom in peace without him howling. Wiping his forehead, he whispers to Mingguk, I'm exhausted, okay? Can I just rest? But right then, Mingguk makes an adorable face and coos at him, melting his heart instantly. Defeated Seongguk gives in and feeds him the milk. The sight sends the mother and manager into another fit of laughter. Later, while tidying up, the manager glances around the cramped space and says thoughtfully, this place must feel too small for all of you. Have you ever considered moving somewhere better? Shaking her head, the mother replies gently, we just can't afford it right now. Leaning closer, the manager lowers her voice and whispers, Samjong Electronics offered your son an exclusive contract. He'll be their model for the new product line. Eyes widening, the mother gasps, about to speak. But the manager quickly puts a finger to her lips to keep her quiet. Seongguk hasn't noticed any of this. Still chasing Mingguk around, the manager continues. I'll send the offer details later. This could be life-changing. He might finally be able to support this family the way he wants to. Then she adds with a glance at her watch, "The director sent a car. We're due at the station. It's been 2 months already." Right then, the doorbell rings and the manager walks over saying, "That must be the ride." But when she opens the door, she freezes in place. Standing there is Michael.